Hi, my name's Nick Best. I'm Managing Director here at Astranti. I just want to start off by telling you a little story from a few years ago. Before I started Astranti, I was a freelance accountant travelling around the country, working at BPP and Kaplan, First Intuition, and one of the places I used to work very regularly was Reed Business School in the Cotswolds. And Reed is based very near Williams Formula One team. And we'd get accountants from the Williams Formula One team coming onto our courses. And they were weekend courses. And occasionally I'd be running a Sunday course at the same time as 3 or 4 of the accountants were in the room. And this was before the days of everyone having mobile phones, smartphones. People had mobile phones, but not smartphones with all the information on. Of course, I had Wi-Fi on my computer. And the management accountants in the class would go, "Oh, Nick, how are we getting on?" You know, I forget the drivers of the time. It was a few years ago now. "How are we getting on? Are we, how did we get on today?" So I go and I check the progress of the races and to see how they'd got on. And I always look back at that and think, they were just management accountants, probably doing normal things management accountants do, monthly management accounts and variance analysis and budgets. But they were doing it for the Williams Formula One team. And the excitement and the enthusiasm that they had over how were they getting on. They were part of this team. And that team were going out racing. And they wanted to know how the progress of that was going. And it made me realise then that actually not all management accounting jobs are equal, as it were. Not all of them the same. Actually, probably the work they were doing was the same, but very much the culture they were in, the team spirit, the enthusiasm that they had for what they were doing and how they were trying to achieve something was really quite different. And I want to kind of leave that thought with you for a moment as I start to think about kind of my career and how I started off as an accountant and where I took it. And I'll take you right back to university. I actually did physics at university. And I remember talking to a friend about careers and where we wanted to go, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, with the one exception that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to run my own business. And how do you do that as a 20-year-old? In fact, that friend and I, we'd had a couple of little businesses at university and made a little bit of money just to supplement our income, and that had kind of given me the bug as an entrepreneur, but certainly in terms of setting up a proper business, really I had no idea. So my decision was, right, let's go and work as an accountant. I got into what was one of the big 6 at the time, the Coopers and Lybrand. Now that's the C in PwC, so it's part of PricewaterhouseCoopers. And spent 3 years training and qualifying as an accountant. In fact, it took me up to 5 years down the line before I started to think, okay, what do I really want to do with my life and my career? And having had those years as an accountant, I really started to realise that actually doing accountancy wasn't for me. I was an auditor, and actually I also spent some time in tax and in actually the marketing department there. And it was mostly the marketing department stuff that interested me the most. But did I really want to do that? I did a lot of soul searching at that point in my life and decided to take a 3-day week at work and convinced my managers at work to do that, where I spent 2 days of the week going and setting up a business. That was the plan. The plan didn't work. I thought of lots of different ideas. I thought about how I would set them up, but none of it was going anywhere. I did that for 6 months and just thought, no, this isn't the way at the moment. This is not going to work for me. My dream of being that entrepreneur got lost at that point. So I had to decide, okay, so what do I want to do? Where is my passion? Where is my enthusiasm? And again, a lot of soul searching, decided that actually I always loved working with people and communicating and presenting, and thought, I'd love to be a tutor. Actually, my favourite part of my first few years as an accountant were my studies. I can know there's probably some of you thinking, what, the studies? That's a horrible bit. But for me, that was the best bit. I loved it. Sad though I may be. But actually, it's kind of worked out quite well because I loved that. And I just liked the whole idea of working with people. So I went off, I joined BPP. I was with BPP for 4 years. I then went actually back to PwC and did training consulting. I was on a year's contract. But that was the key. What did I do at the end of that year's contract? And I was asking my questions throughout that year. What was the next step for me? I still had that yearning to be an entrepreneur. And actually, the next step in that direction was to go freelance. Because actually, you are running your own little business as a freelancer. Of course, it's not a big business, not the big grand business I had envisaged when I was back at uni, but it was a business. And so that's what I did. And I phoned around the different accountancy tutorial firms. Actually, within 2 to 3 weeks, I'd fully filled out my diary for the next 6 months. Got loads of work in and went off and started my, in a sense, career as an entrepreneur. And actually, over the next 8 years, I started up lots of little businesses. If it was 2 little businesses, I did a business in coaching, I did a business in property development. In fact, my property development business, unfortunately for me, I started in 2006, a year before the financial crash, and actually it was quite a big failure actually in the end. The crash happened and my investments failed, and one of those lessons that you learn as you're trying to develop yourself as an entrepreneur. A couple of years after that, picked myself up off the ground, and actually I was still looking for ideas, still thinking, I hadn't given up on my entrepreneur, I was still going around freelancing, so still earning a nice wage as a freelance accountant, so I certainly couldn't complain about my lifestyle, but I still had that yearning to be an entrepreneur. And I was watching some online videos from a guy called Jeff Walker, who was talking about how you go about marketing your services. And I watched those videos and thought, well, I'm going around being a freelancer. I'm going around for all these colleges, teaching students what to do and how to pass their exams. I could do that for myself. And having watched his videos on how to market myself, I thought, well, I can do that. I can do that marketing. I can do the teaching. At the time, I was renowned as a case study tutor, one of the best known case study tutors that there was at the time, teaching all around the country. I was pretty much only teaching case study all around the country for all the different bodies or tuition providers at that particular time. And I put together the website, I recorded the courses, I started marketing using these marketing techniques that had been that I'd learnt, and within 2 months I was making more money from the online courses than I was from my kind of day job, as it were, of going around as a freelance accountant. Within a year I'd given up the freelancing, and here we are now, sort of 8 years on from that, and we've got a team here of 15, 16 people. We've got about 20 freelancers that work for us. We've got all of our courses for CIMA and developing courses for other accountancy bodies as well. And in a sense, I'm living my dream. And has it worked out? Do I love running a business as I thought I might? Absolutely, absolutely. This is just fantastic, and I've been lucky in that. But the reason to tell you this story was I had that vision back when I was at uni. I kind of started dabbling in it a few years later and it didn't work out. I tried actually a few other entrepreneurial ideas, one of which in particular was a big failure. And yet I kept on down the line with that goal in mind, with that idea of what I really wanted to do in mind. And it's a bit like travelling on a journey. We're setting off on a trip somewhere. Let's say we're going on a car trip. And as you head down the road, the question is always, what are the options that you have ahead of you as you come to junctions? And one thing I see, and this is coming to my principle and point really behind the video here today, one thing I see so many people doing is, well, they don't know really what they want and where they want to be and what their idea is and what their ideal position is for the future. And so when they get to their junctions, the junction where my 1-year contract at PwC had ended, or that juncture where I knew that actually doing accountancy wasn't for me, they don't know what the next thing is. In fact, what I see with a lot of people is they just carry on doing the same thing, and they keep on going and they keep on going. And certainly I've got friends from university who have done that. One in particular I can think of who joined a firm as an accountant, another accountant, and has kept on going in that firm and is still doing pretty much the same job that he's done for the last 25 years. Actually, I've seen the best man at my wedding. He was an interesting one. He had another interesting story because he desperately wanted to work in a merchant bank. And we left university together, and he didn't have the grades to get into a merchant bank at that sort of point as a graduate. But he knew what he wanted. He knew he wanted to work in that merchant bank or investment bank. And so he had a maths degree and decided he'd go and work in a statistics company that were producing statistics on stocks and shares. He did that for a couple of years. He then moved on to another statistical company in a more senior role. Before he was about 5 or 6 years doing that. And then JP Morgan were looking for someone to head up a new department doing their statistics. Perfect. He had the experience. He went to work for JP Morgan. He's still there now. And he didn't just stop there. He set that department up and he moved on and runs funds now, which is what he's always wanted. He runs funds for very wealthy individuals. But he always knew where his long-term position, where his long-term wanted to be. And that guided some of the small decisions. It took him a long time to get there, to his final, much like me. It took him a long time to get to that position. But it was having that objective that when you come to that crossroads, it's okay, well actually, I know what I really want here, I'll take that route rather than this one. Or in fact, sometimes you actually even make your own crossroads. It's coming, you keep straight down that road, do you take the left or the right turn? Because that's right. So that's what I want you to think about as part of this video, is what is it for you? For me it was an entrepreneur. For my friend it was working in an investment bank as a fund manager. For you it could be completely different. Perhaps it's working at a charity and feeling like you're really doing good. Perhaps it's back to the Williams Formula One. It's a particular industry which you're particularly passionate about, something you really love. Perhaps it's lifestyle that's important. Perhaps it's family. And really what you'd love is a really well-paid 3-day-a-week job. Actually, a quarter of the staff that we have here work a 4-day week. It's the lifestyle combined with the job that is important to them. And that's really the message I want you to think about, is what is it that's right for you? What is it that your long-term direction should be, so that as it's not necessarily about what you're doing in 6 months' time. I'm looking back over a 25-year career here, and I'm looking back thinking how that direction and that movement over that time took me to where I wanted to be, and my friend where he wanted to be. I was reading Claude Littner's biography just last week. Now, Claude Littner, for anyone who doesn't know who he is, you may have heard of The Apprentice, very famous in the US. Of course, Donald Trump was the original apprentice on the TV, having the candidates come in to select who was going to get the role in his organisation. In the UK it's Alan Sugar, and Claude Littner is his right-hand man. But actually what was interesting reading his biography was Claude Littner started life as an accountant, much like you or I. And he moved on to set up his own business, but then he found his passion in turning around businesses. And he worked for Alan Sugar, going out to different offices, turning those around, before then becoming the CEO of Tottenham Hotspur, before then going out and actually turning around 2 or 3 other businesses which he had shareholdings in, made hundreds of millions of pounds doing that, before then becoming Alan Sugar's right-hand man on The Apprentice. And he now actually is chairman of all of Alan Sugar's companies. They're billion-pound companies. But he started off life as an accountant, but he really found his specialism in turning companies around. That was the thing for him, and he loved it and found he was very good at it as well. And there are so many options available to us. Perhaps it's to get to the top of your organisation, perhaps it's to be a finance director at a big company. I don't know what it is. The question is why does it work? And why does having that long-term perspective help us get to the right point? the answer lies in what's called the reticular activating system. Just hold on with me, bear with me for a moment here. And the reticular activating system is a way of noticing things, the way we notice what we got. What we do in our heads is we delete lots of information that's out there. We just simply can't take everything in. I bought a new car last year, a Volvo V40, and you may have had a similar experience. Until my old car broke down and it wasn't worth repairing, I thought, right, let's get a new one. I'd really hardly noticed Volvos on the road prior to that point. But suddenly, as soon as I started looking around at these cars, they were all over the place. All these Volvos popping up all over the place. We ended up buying this black Volvo V40, and it's actually been a really lovely car. And what was amazing was actually just out here, there's a sort of rank of parking spaces just outside our offices here, whereas there's about 15 parking spaces, which we have too. There's a row of buildings going along. Suddenly I noticed, like the day after we bought this black Volvo, the identical black Volvo was being parked just up the road from us. Someone in one of the offices nearby has got that same thing. Now, I hadn't noticed the Volvos, I hadn't noticed that black Volvo until I started focusing on cars. And we have so many experiences like that. It's what your brain is picking up on. It's called the reticular activating system. It's what it's deleting, what we don't notice day to day, all the useless stuff, and what we pick up on. If we have a long-term objective, and it doesn't have to be specific, it could be like mine, I want to be an entrepreneur, okay, or like my friend, I want to work in an investment bank. The brain looks for opportunities. For me, the key one when it came to Astranti was watching that marketing video. This is how you can market your products and your business. And I was still looking for ideas, and I watched that. That was the trigger for me. Now, had I not had that goal, that wouldn't have been a trigger. I wouldn't have even watched the video. Astranti wouldn't be here today. And it's what you notice. So by having those long-term objectives, even if it's only a vague long-term, I just want to be an FD in 20 years' time, something like that, you start noticing opportunities that are out there that you might not be. When you get to those crossroads, you start noticing the opportunity that's taking you in that direction. Okay. So that's the kind of bit of science there. So what for you then? What is it? My hope for you now is that you'll just start thinking about, by far the majority of you listening to this will be on your way to qualification. And I look back and I think that was absolutely the best starting point I could have hoped for, was becoming a qualified accountant. It's always given me the security to be able to go and explore other things, knowing always I could just go back and be an accountant and earn a very good wage and look after my family and pay my mortgage. It was a fantastic starting point. As it ended up, I ended up teaching towards those exams, so it became my life. But you are in that route. But where is it that you want to be after that? When you get qualified, what are the options that you will have, and which are the ones that are going to be taking you in the right long-term direction? And you don't have to decide today, but over the next few weeks and months, be thinking, what is it that really I want? What industry? What type of company? What kind of culture do I work in? How many hours do I want to work? What's the thing that's going to really turn me on, and how am I going to move in that direction? Give it some thought. And with this in mind, just a couple of years ago, I'm a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, the ICAW, that's my professional body, and I was watching some videos that had been posted there from a guy called Simon Gray, and he was talking about careers and how to develop your career and how to get the job you really wanted, as opposed to just that, okay, I'm just going to look online or in a magazine or go to an agency and then they'll just give me some jobs and I'll just take the one that happens to be available at the moment. He was talking about how do you go about getting the jobs you really want, the ones that are going to move your career forward. And if you want to be an FD, how do you navigate that path to the FD? And he had this series of videos, and just recently came across Simon again, and Simon and I then started to I've now seen a range of material that Simon has produced. Simon, another chartered accountant, who then went off to become a recruitment consultant, and so spent years helping people get the jobs that they wanted. Of course, as a recruitment consultant, you're on commission, and you get commission for placing people. But it's also about what are the jobs you want, and how do you get the job you want, as opposed to just being placed in any old role. And Simon has produced a whole program and a whole coaching methodology which guides people to the right jobs and shows them where to find the jobs that they really want. And again, I take you back to the the Williams Formula One team. Where is that job? Someone wants to work in that industry. How do you find that job? You're not going to be able to go and look on Indeed or some other website for recruitment and just find that job. But there are ways. And Simon talks about the hidden market, where you can tap into those roles that actually aren't advertised, and actually the majority of really great positions just aren't out there on the market. And Simon is doing some videos for us, and he's got a couple of videos coming up over the next few days, which will kind of follow on from this whole idea of thinking about your career and how to take it forward. And the next idea he's going to talk to you about is that of the hidden market. What is that, and how do you tap into that to help you take your career forward? Whatever you decide to do with your career and your life, and I do wish you the best of luck as you go forward in doing that. But I do also hope you'll listen to Simon's advice as someone who absolutely knows the stuff in terms of building a career that's going to go where you want it to do. You want it to go. So I hope you enjoy those. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the series that's coming up from Simon over the next few days.